Hi everyone. This week we are going to look at lessons 49 through 52. So let's get started. This week you're going to need your lessons manual, the student worksheets, the math card games manual and the game cards. You'll need the place value cards, a dry erase board, the centimeter cubes, the geometry panels, and the short multiplication table, which is found in Appendix 1. This week, we are going to continue to work on large numbers and introduce division with remainders. Let's go ahead and get started by turning to lesson 49. If your lesson manual was printed in 2015 or before, there is a correction listed on our corrections page. So you're going to want to make those changes prior to starting this lesson. In the warm-up section, you're going to see one last number puzzle. You're going to want to complete this puzzle just as you did last week. Now, if your child has really enjoyed these puzzles, this is the last puzzle game used in the warm-up, but there is a math card game that builds similar puzzles. That game is called Magic Squares Memory, and it's found in the addition chapter number 60 in the Math Card Games Manual. And we do have a blog for that. It's called Winter Games Magic Square Memory. So go ahead and look that one up. Look at the section called Adding 1. You're going to want to start off by giving your child both the dry erase board and the place value cards. Then you are going to write on the board 999 plus 1. If your child struggles with knowing what number comes after 999, then you can let them go ahead and use side 2 of the abacus. Once your child verbally solves that problem, then have them find the 1000 on their place value cards and pull that out. Then you're going to write on the board 99,999 plus 1. You'll want to see if your child can do that without any prompts from you. But if they cannot, then go ahead and say the number. Sometimes that helps them think about it. So say the number 99,999 plus 1 and see if they can get it. If they are still struggling with it, then start giving them a little bit stronger verbal cues by saying, well, what number comes after 99? 100. What 1,000 comes after 99,000? 100,000. And then follow it by saying, so what is the number that comes after 99,999? 100,000. The next problem that you're going to write on the board is 999,999 plus 1. Now, some kids are not comfortable or haven't learned the term million yet or don't really know where it falls into the place value. If that's the case, then go ahead and tell your child, if your child doesn't know, that the solution is 1 million. You'll want to tell your child too that they're going to need a comma after the word, after million. So remind them when they say the term million or 1,000 or later on billion, that is where they put the comma in when they write the numbers out. Look at the section called Composing Larger Numbers. Your child is going to need their place value cards, but they're only going to need the hundreds, the tens, and the ones place value cards. They're not going to need the thousands place value cards. And then you are actually going to build that first problem at the very bottom of the first page. You're going to build the 2,333,444 using only the hundreds, tens, and ones place value cards, just like it's shown in the lesson manual. Now notice they leave a space between the groupings of numbers. When I took my daughter through this lesson, I actually wrote commas on small little pieces of paper. And then she took those pieces of paper and inserted the commas where they went while she was building the number. Now, if you have in your home dry kidney beans, that will work as well, and it will be just as much fun. Then you're going to have your child write out this number and say it. So when we say this number out loud, I want you to emphasize the name of the denomination where the comma goes. For example, for this particular number, I would say 2 million, or actually I would write 2,333,444. Point to that comma, say that, or show the comma, every single time you use the term million or thousand. That will help your child understand and know where to place the comma when they write the numbers out. Now on the top of the second page, your child is going to build the number on their own, 55,666,777. And you're going to have them insert the commas with the either slips of paper or a kidney bean, or just leave those spaces so that they know where those commas would be. Then have your child write out that number on the whiteboard. You will also want to have your child say that number out loud, highlighting the place value terms where the comma would be placed. So they would say 55,666,777. And then have your child point to the numbers, add the commas, the air commas, or point to the comma or the kidney bean as they say their number. The next section on the second page of the lesson will have your child subtract 700 from the number that they just built, which was 55,666,777. Now, when I first taught my daughter this, I asked her before we even began anything, where the hundreds place was in this number. Because in this particular number, they actually say 100 two different times. They said it in the thousands, and they also said it in the hundreds. So we want to make sure the child is understanding what we are subtracting from. We are subtracting 700 and not 700,000. Once your child has identified the correct place value location, then you're going to show them how to flip the 700 card around so the 0 is showing. So let me show you what I mean. When they build the card, they're going to have 777,000. If you are subtracting the 700 from that, you are actually going to just take this 700 card, and you're going to flip it upside down. So now the 0 is showing as opposed to the 7. And so that's what your child is going to do. Just the easier way of showing that particular number. Then you're going to want to have your child read the number as they point to each place value and comma. So they're going to go 55,666,077. Now, my struggling learners really struggled with the larger place value numbers. One reason why they had a hard time with it, because each grouping had their own sets of hundreds, tens, and ones, and so they would kind of get confused. So what I did was I put a place value chart on top of our front dry erase board, not the little one that they use for math, but the one that I have in the front of my classroom. You may want to, if you don't have a big whiteboard that you can use in your classroom, then you might want to just make a little chart. Let me show you what it looked like. So this is sort of what it would look like on the whiteboard. I would have the 10 billion, the ones, and then show the comma. 100 million, 10 million, ones, show the comma. 100,000, 10,000, ones, comma for the thousands, and then the hundreds, tens, and ones. And that way they saw that hundreds was repeated several times, tens were repeated several times, and it also showed where the commas went. So if you find this helpful, you might want to try this for your family. Then you're going to want to have your child complete worksheet 33 on their own if they can. Now, my struggling learners really struggled when composing the large numbers from the words, those first 4 problems on the worksheet. So the chart that I just showed you really helps them know where to put their numbers and where to put their commas. So you may want to try that with your child to see if it helps. Also, you may want to check your child's work before going on too far into the worksheet, just to make sure your child understands these larger place value numbers. You don't want them practicing this concept over and over and over incorrectly. So spot checking them along the way will really help keep them from being frustrated, as well as making sure that they're not practicing it incorrectly. For the last section of the worksheet, your child is going to write in words the numbers that is written in digits. Now your child might need a little help in their spelling of some of those words, but if your child spelled a word incorrectly, just mention it. Don't mark it wrong, just mention it and make sure your child knows for the future how to spell that word. You're going to also want to check and make sure they understand place value, as this is really the goal of the entire worksheet. The lesson actually suggests for this lesson playing the game rows and columns. This game was recommended last week. So if you played it last week, it's a review. This is actually an addition game, not a multiplication math card game. So if your child is still working and learning on those multiplication math facts, then instead of playing rows and columns, you could choose or add to a multiplication math card game that your child can play to keep working on those multiplication math facts. Okay, well, let's go ahead and turn to lesson 50. This is the first lesson in which you are going to use the geometry panels. Now, before we get going into this lesson, let me show you how to use the geometry panels. Now, the geometry panels look like this. This is the square, but you're also going to find in your packet the triangles, the pentagons, and the hexagons. The first thing you're going to want to do in any of the shapes that you use, you're going to want to take the edge and bend it over where the perforation is. And just think of it as bending color to color. So you're going to go around on all of the sides and bend those forward. Then, once you've done that, you're ready to start attaching them. Now, for this particular lesson, you are actually going to build a portion of a cube. Now, to do that, you're going to take two panels, and you're going to put the white side to white side, and you're going to line up this edge. Then you're going to take a rubber band and you're going to hook it on that side and flip it around. So now you have two pieces attached. You're going to do the same thing because you're also going to need the bottom to it. So you're going to do the same thing, white to white here. We're going to connect that. But because we're building a cube, this is going to slide out, which means I can connect it to this side too. So I'm going to connect these two together. Again, get a rubber band and slide it in here all the way across. And I've got to start here. This is what it's going to look like for this particular lesson. We're going to have it so we have a bottom, a back, and two sides. But we have the top and the front section opened up. And that's how we're going to use the cube in this particular lesson. All right, so the first paragraph of the warm-up is reviewing the order of operations. Now, just as a reminder for you, with order of operations, you start with the parentheses first. Normally, you also do the exponents, but we don't have exponents yet, so ignore that. So parentheses first, then multiplication and division, then addition and subtraction. The second paragraph of the warm-up is actually reviewing everything that we learned in lesson 49. Okay, now go to the section that's called Constructing 1,000. Here is where your child is going to build the partial cube. Or you can go ahead and build the cube in advance if your child struggles with dexterity. Although that being said, my kids loved using the geometry panel. So don't rob them of the experience of it if your child likes to do that. If you find your child's getting frustrated or they do struggle with fine motor skills, then you may want to have that ready in advance. The first question asked in this section is about how many centimeter cubes, that's these things here, about how many centimeter cubes do you think will fit in this large cube? Now, my kids immediately said, at least my silly ones would say, a lot. But you're going to want to have your child ponder through this and really give more of an exact number than just a lot. So kind of guide them through. Now, a couple of my kids were able to do this fairly well, and a couple of my kids needed some assistance. If your child completely blanks on how to solve this, then basically have them fill in the bottom portion of this. I'm not going to show it very well. Bottom portion of this with these centimeter cubes so that they can see it. For the more advanced students, you can actually have them fill in just one side and then maybe the back side, because to find an area of a square or a rectangle, they know that they need to multiply side times side. So in this particular case, they are actually multiplying 10 times 10, which equals 100. So they can actually calculate the area of one row of that cube. As your child works through that, then say, okay, now that you've figured out that bottom area, we need to go, because that's just one row, right? We need to go all the way to the top. So then you're going to say, okay, I need one row. How many more rows am I going to need? So then you're going to stack up these centimeter cubes along the side of the cube, and then you're going to see how tall they get, which, by the way, you're going to need 10 of these rows stacked up next to the cube. So a way of describing that would be, I will have 100, and then 200, 300, 400, 500, 600, and so forth until they get to 1000 or 1000. If you have an advanced students, you may want to help them learn how to calculate the volume of the shape, which is basically what they've done up to this point. But you want to maybe tell them the formula for doing that and help them understand that formula, which is basically what they did. So they did the 10 one direction, the 10 back and forth, and then the 10 high. So 10 times 10 times 10 equals 1000, which is exactly the number that they got when filling in the cube. Now, let's take a look at the section called Visualizing the Larger Numbers. These questions are going to have your child visualize the yellow cube, which has 1000 centimeter cubes in it. Then it's going to have your child visualize 10 of these. Now, if this is too large for your child to visualize, then you might want to draw examples on the whiteboard. Draw 10 yellow cubes or 10 larger cubes. I found that with my struggling learners, when they struggled with these questions, drawing diagrams on a whiteboard really helped my kids think through these problems a little bit better. Look at the top of the second page of the lesson under the section called Comparing Large Numbers. Here you have a list of 3 different numbers that you're going to write on the whiteboard, and you're going to ask your child which number is the largest. Take a look at the last sentence of that first paragraph. It says, point out that when your child sees a comma, they say a special word like thousand or million. Take a look also to the right of that under the explanation section. It says, avoid suggesting counting the number of digits to determine the greatest number. It will not work when decimals are involved. So what you're not going to want to do is say, okay, which one of these numbers is the largest? Hey, let's count how many digits there are, and the one with the most digits is the largest number, because that's not always going to be the case, especially with decimals. So make sure that they're actually saying the number and considering which place value they're using. So that way they can see and hear the largest place value. Once they finish that section, then they're going to work through worksheet 34. Now, if you have a struggling learner, or if your child struggles a little bit with comparisons, there may be too many numbers on that worksheet to compare. If that is the case, then you can kind of wheedle out a couple numbers. So give them 2 or 3 numbers to compare to determine which number is the lower one, and then let them tell you which number is the lowest, and that will be that number that they're needing next. So you're kind of weeding through all of those numbers, that big long list of numbers, and just kind of weeding through so that they only have 2 or 3 to choose from, and that might help that struggling learner. That way, they're still comparing numbers, but they're not comparing such a large list of them. Take a look at the conclusion section. The first question says this: what is 1000 multiplied by 10? Now, those numbers might seem so big that your child kind of checks out a little bit. If you find that your child is struggling with that concept, then drop it back down and think of something smaller. I do this all the time with my struggling learners particularly, but with all of my kids as we're working on larger concepts. So instead of saying, what is 1,000 multiplied by 10, I would say, well, what is 3 multiplied by 10? Well, that one's an easy one. The kids know that one. So you're going to say, okay, 10 times 3 is 30. So what do you noticing? What are you noticing with the number 3 and 30? What is the change? And your child will notice, well, 30 has an extra 0 added to the end. And you're like, yes. So go ahead and give them another one. What is, 30 times 10? 300. So they're going to add another 0. So they're seeing this pattern. And then when you get to what is 1,000 times 10, it makes it much easier. They understand the pattern, so they understand what the answer is. Now, the math card game suggested for this particular lesson is called On the Next Decade Game. We do not have a blog for that game. It also is an addition game. So if you want to play it and you can't figure it out, feel free to give us a call. Or email us, and we'll be happy to guide you through that game. However, if your child is still struggling with multiplication, or if they're still learning those multiplication math facts, then definitely pick a multiplication math card game. Even if you're playing On the Next Decade Game, definitely throw in a multiplication math card game. Well, let's go ahead and turn to lesson 51. This is an enrichment lesson. Take a look at the first paragraph under the explanation section. It says this: this is the first of several enrichment lessons designed to bring the world of math into everyday life. If necessary, because of time restraints, the lessons can be omitted without loss of continuity. So if you find you're way behind and you are not catching up quickly, this is one of those lessons that you can just kind of skip through, not do, and move on to the next lesson. If you're right on target or just a little bit behind, you've got plenty of time to go ahead and do this lesson. It might enhance their understanding of place value, especially if your child's struggling with that larger place value. This lesson would be another good lesson for you to continue working on it. Okay, the warm-up section is reviewing what your child learned in lesson 50. And it will also be used to be building, this lesson will be built upon what is being covered in the warm-up section. All right, take a look at the section called Number of Digits. A few lines down, it says this: add the incorrect commas as shown below. So you're actually going to create this number, putting the commas in an incorrect spot. And I absolutely love when lessons ask us to do this, because it is having your child catch the error. It develops critical thinking, analytical thinking, and it will also train them to catch their own errors later on. A little further down, it will also have you read the number incorrectly, so your child will catch it, hopefully, and correct you. So this is another great activity for your child to work through. The last sentence on that first page says this: what is another name for 1,000 thousands? Now, this might be a complete new material for your child. If so, have them just take a guess. They may say cajillion or create a brand new number, and if so, that's fine. If they spend too much time thinking about it, they don't know, or just shrugs, then just tell them, this is called a million. 1,000 thousands is a million. Now, in the middle of the second page, your child is going to build a very large number into the billions using hundreds, tens, and ones place value cards, just like you did in the previous lesson. You're going to want to use those commas that you used, those small little commas that you put on slips of paper, or those kidney beans for this particular lesson or this particular activity as well. During this activity, you are going to write the numbers of the population of China and the population of India. Make sure you keep those numbers written on the whiteboard where your child can see them, because they're going to compare those numbers after they finish building the numbers with the place value cards. Now, your child is not actually going to be able to compare the two populations of China and India using the numbers that they build with the place value cards, because they're going to actually need to reuse some of those place value cards. So they're going to need to have the numbers that you wrote to be able to see the comparison. Give your child worksheet 35 after you finish that section. Notice you're going to have your child complete the first problem on their own and then discuss it with you. Make sure your child understands this before you have them finish through the entire worksheet. If your child struggles with place value, then you may want to spot check their answers along the way as they're working through the worksheet. There is a math card game suggested, and it's again called On the Next Decade game. It's the same math card game that was suggested for lesson 50. I also highly recommend that you play a multiplication math card game to keep up and learn those multiplication math facts. Let's go ahead and turn to lesson 52. The second half of the warm-up is the review of order of operations. So remember the order: parentheses, multiplication and division, addition and subtraction. After the warm-up section, you're going to give your child worksheet 36, and you're going to have them read through that first word problem 2 times. Make sure they understand what is being asked before they start solving that word problem. You will have your child write the equation for this word problem and solve it. They hopefully can do this independently on their own. If not, you can give them a little help along the way. After they finish writing those equations and solving it, then they're going to discuss this problem with you. Now remember, you are not grading their answer. You're just talking about it. This will help your child understand the why of how they got something wrong, and it will keep a positive attitude. If you come up to them and say wrong, they're going to all of a sudden kind of shut down a little bit. You're not going to want them feeling down upon themselves. You're wanting them to explore and discover. So by saying, okay, well, let's discuss this. Let's see where we're kind of off a little bit. That way your child is learning to find their own error. And the best way to do that, though, is asking them questions. A lot of times what I did with word problems is I would draw diagrams for the word problems to help my child think through them. I would often use whole circles as well, so you might want to remember to do that. In the second to last paragraph, you will have to change up that word problem just a little bit. Now this word problem, the new one, is not written on the worksheet. So you're going to start with the one on the worksheet, and then you're going to alter it a little bit to make it a little bit different. And this is where you're going to introduce remainders. So let's talk through this by first reading the word problem together, and then we'll discuss how it changes. So the word problem is this: the prize for winners at a fair is a bag with 5 bouncing balls. Davis is preparing the prizes. He has 35 balls. How many bags can he fill? So when you change this word problem, Davis will then have 37 balls instead of 35. And then you will ask your child, can Davis still build 7 bags of balls? Yes, he still can. But are there any balls left over? Yes, there are 2 balls left over actually. And then you're going to explain that the leftovers is called remainder. The last paragraph of the first page and into the top of the second page will show your child how to use the short multiplication table to solve division problems. And in case you've forgotten, this is what the short multiplication table looks like. And this is part of the appendix packet, or if you didn't get the appendix packet, it's in the very back of your lessons manual. Using the short multiplication table will really help your child learn division, especially at the very beginning. Learn how to do short division problems. Let me show you how it works. So let me show you how to do division problems using the short multiplication table. I'm going to look at a couple of the problems that are listed in our lesson. The first problem I'm going to look at is the 35 divided by 5. So what we want to do is start at the 5, what we're dividing by, and we're going to go all the way until we can find 35. So we start here and we start counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Remember, we go down. 6, 7. So 35 divided by 5 is 7. Now let's take a look at one with remainders. The next one we have, the next example is 37 divided by 5. Again, we're going to start at the 5, and we're going to go all the way until we find a number close to 37 but does not go over. So here we go. 5, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, but that's not 37, is it? If we go one more though, it's greater than 37. So this is going to be our answer. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But now we need to find the remainder. What is the difference between 37 and 35? 2. So our answer is 7 with a remainder of 2. Let's do a couple from your student's worksheet book, or worksheet for the day. The first problem I'm going to go over is 18 divided by 7. The first step is go to the 7, and we're going to go until we find 18. So we have 1, 2. If we went a third time, this number is greater than 18. So we are stopping at 2. So 1, 2. Now we need to find the difference of 18 and 14, which is 4. So our answer is 2 with a remainder of 4. Let's do another one. Let's do 46 divided by 10. We go to the line where it's of 10, because we're dividing by 10. So we're going to go until we find a number that's near 46. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. If we go another one, that would be too large. So we are stopping at 40. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And we need to find the difference between 46 and 40. And the difference is 6. So our answer is, to the problem, 46 divided by 10 is 4 with a remainder of 6. Now you're actually going to change up that word problem one more time. Actually, you're going to add another layer to it. So let's read it at the top of the second page. It says, Davis has a friend helping. Jamie has 18 balls. How many bags of 5 bouncing balls can Jamie make? So here you're going to find out how many bouncing balls, how many bags of balls that Jamie can make. And here we're going to discover that Jamie can make 3 bags of balls with 3 remaining, a remainder of 3. This lesson adds one final piece to this problem by combining all of the balls that Davis and Jamie has to see how many bags they can fill. And I would recommend, and what the lesson does, is it starts with how many bags and leftover balls Davis has, which he made 7 bags of balls with 2 extra. And then Jamie was able to make 3 bags of balls and 3 extra. That means that combined, they were able to put together 7 full bags of balls, and they have 5 balls remaining. But note, there are 5 balls in the bag. With 5 balls remaining, that means they're able to make 1 more bag of balls. So because they can fit that extra bag of balls in there, it gives them a total of 11 bags of balls. I hope that makes sense. It's really hard to think through, but follow along in the lesson. If you have any questions at all, give us a call or email us. Once you have worked through all of the elements of this word problem, have your child work through the rest of the worksheet. Now, I'd highly recommend that you spot check your child as they solve the math problems. That way, they don't complete the entire worksheet incorrectly, have to go back and erase and fix everything. That just causes frustration and anxiety. By spot checking as they go, you can check for the errors in their thinking along the way and prevent potential errors later on in the worksheet. The last section of the worksheet are flat out division problems with a remainder. You can have your child use the short multiplication table as needed. The math card game suggested for this game is called the 20s game. It is a fun, easy game to play to review their addition facts of 20. Now, that being said, I sound like a broken record, I know, but If you play this game, or if your child is really struggling with multiplication, then I highly recommend continuing playing a multiplication math card game to continue working and building up those math facts. Okay, so that's it for the week. If you have any questions or concerns, don't hesitate to call or email us. We are here to help you. I look forward to seeing you next week when we go over lessons 53 through 56. Have a great week, everybody.